Hello crafters and welcome back. My name is Deepa from Designs by D, and today I have another post for the Scrap and Stamp June Inspiration Hop. So this hop is all about masculine cards and it's basically for the boys. We have Father's Day coming up, and I know that I'm not the only one who struggles with masculine cards. So I actually have 6 cards that I made today. 4 I made with Simon Hurley's stamping foam, which I have to say is genius. And 2 I made with the Pink Fresh Studio Wintry Forest layering stencils. Now, one of them may look a bit more, or I should say a bit less masculine to you, but I mean, I think it would work as a masculine card too. It's really up to you and who you're giving it to. So as I said, I'm using those stamping foams by Simon Hurley. I've got an embossing folder, some Spellbinders dies, and a foil plate, along with the Pink Fresh Studio Wintry Forest layering stencils. So with this foam, like the pack that I have has 4 of these foams in it. So it's it's really not that expensive. And it actually, if anything happens to one of your foams, you always have another one that you can go to. So what I did was I heated that foam up for about 10 to 20 seconds. And then I pressed it into my embossing folder. So you can see I'm using my Misty stamping tool kind of as like a nice flat surface to add pressure so that it picks up the imprint nicely. You could use any type of embossing folder. This works on all types of mediums. So I really hope that you kind of look around your craft room or your house and find things that you might want to take an imprint of. I'm adding some ink directly to the foam. So you can see once you stamp that foam in for about 10 seconds, I held it for 10 seconds, it keeps the shape of that folder. And I'm adding some oxide inks in broken china, and then I'm adding some prize ribbon, which I'm actually just lightly rubbing over the top so that it doesn't completely cover all of the nooks and crannies. You want to just grab the pieces of that foam that are sticking up, and that's how you get this beautiful two-tone look with that embossing folder. Now to clean it off is simple. All I did was use a bottle full of water, so there's nothing else in there, just water. I just spray the top of it, and I'm wiping it off with my towel that I use for a whole bunch of stuff. So you really don't have to use anything special with this product. You just wipe it off, and once you've wiped off all of your ink, all you have to do is reheat it. And when you reheat it, you're basically causing the foam to go back to its normal shape, which is flat, so that it's going to basically lose the imprint that you initially had put in it. So again, I'm heating this foam with my heat tool. You can see I've got it pretty close, but not touching it. And I do this for about 10 to 20 seconds. Now I'm going to use a foil plate, which is a great idea. You could use anything. As I said, maybe you have a plate lying around or a bowl that has a nice imprint. You could do this with that as well. And I like to use that Misty tool as just kind of like something to add pressure because it evenly adds the pressure, so I don't have to worry as to whether I picked up the imprint on the left or right side of the foam. And it just works well. Now, in order to add ink to this block, I'm using some cracked pistachio and blueprint sketch. And you can see that I've kind of added the blueprint sketch on top of the cracked pistachio to create a bit of a gradient. Now I'm going to go back again with the cracked pistachio, and you could be worried about muddying your ink pads. All you really have to do is just wipe off that excess ink of the opposite or of the other color so that it doesn't completely absorb into your ink pad and ruin it. So really, there's really not a problem if you go over your ink pads of the different color. Just make sure to wipe it off. So that stamped out a beautiful print. Now I'm going to go ahead and heat this foam again to lose that impression and then move on to the next thing, which is going to be these beautiful dies from Spellbinders. These are nice dies to use as they are, especially for a masculine card because they are gears. But if you're not really in the mood to do a bunch of die cutting, this is a really quick way to get the same kind of look but with an imprint of ink. Now all I did was kind of arrange the gears the way I wanted them. And then I heated my foam again and I pressed it into those gears. And you'll see that the imprint you get is so detailed. This works so nicely. I didn't press too hard. As I said, using that Misty platform really gives you a bit more leverage to make sure that you're getting a good imprint. Now, when I'm adding this ink, I'm adding some mowed lawn, and I'm also going to add some rustic wilderness and some pine needles, just with a little bit of a lighter hand, just so that I can get different variations in colors. And I am going to darken the edges, so all 4 edges around the perimeter of this foam pad, just to create a little bit of, I guess, more of like a focal point for this print. Now, as you can see, what's allowing me to kind of go through this process pretty quickly, I'm telling you, this didn't really take me that long. It probably took me 10 to 15 minutes to get 4 of these backgrounds done. So it gives you a lot all at once, and then all you really have to do is put the cards together. So anyways, I cut out A2 sized panels, like a whole bunch of them, just so that I could kind of go through each of these stamped foam methods with you very quickly. Now, as you can see, I am using so many different mediums. I've got the embossing folder, I've used the dies, I've used a hot plate, and for my last item, I'm actually gonna use something around the house. So this is one of my craft drawers, and it just has this really cool grid pattern in like a diamond formation. I thought that this would make a nice print. So I'm actually just going to heat my foam and press it into this drawer to see the pattern that it gives me. As I mentioned, you can do this with any items that you have lying around the house. You could do it with certain types of stiffer fabrics. As I said, plates or bowls. Maybe you have some sort of accent pieces around the house that have like a nice pattern that you'd like to use. Anything like that would work. So for this one, I'm adding some Stormy Sky and some chipped sapphire oxide inks. Again, with the same technique whereby I'm adding the darker color with a bit of a lighter hand and then wiping off any of the muddying on my pads. It's very important because if you don't clean off your pads, you are going to ruin them. The color's not going to be the same. So once I've got that imprint put down, it gives such a really cool, different look. And every time you stamp these, depending on whether you have a stronger impression on one side of your foam or the other, you're going to get different looks. So now that I've got all those backgrounds down, I'm going to basically put them aside to dry, and I'm going to take my Pinkfresh Studio Wintry Forest layering dies. Now you can see there's 6 of these layers, and one of the layers is actually a snow layer because these are supposed to be used for the winter time, but I thought, why not use them to make a masculine card of just like a nice forest scene. So what I did was I used only the 5 layers which have the pine trees. And for the first layer, I added ink in Salvage Patina. The second layer, I added ink in Mowed Lawn, and then the third layer, Evergreen Bough, Rustic Wilderness, and then the final layer in Pine Needles. Now you can see as I'm adding ink to each of these layers, I'm concentrating the color in more of the trees and lightening up as it goes down. You don't have to color that entire bottom portion of the stencil because it's going to get covered up with the next layer. Now for the final layer, you do kind of have to finish it off a bit. And that's the final look that you get. Now, I probably should have come down a little bit further with that second last stencil. So I'm just going to take my brush with whatever excess ink is left on there and just kind of fill it in a bit so that there's not too much of a harsh white. So it still creates a nice cohesive forest. Now, if you wanted to, you could actually stop this card with maybe like the second or the third layer and leave the bottom white so that it kind of fades into white. That would also be another look you could go for with this card. And then for the actual sentiment, I'm using some Concord and Ninths bold and brushy stamp sets. These are the uppercase and lowercase, and I just stamped out Dad there. Pretty simple. Now for the rest of the cards, to put them together, I'm using some Pinkfresh Studio Perfect Sentiments. They were already foiled and I cut them out a while ago, and I just kind of keep them aside to use when I need them quickly. And then I've also got some frames. Now you can see that I keep all of them in a little folder. I'm going to be using the Pinkfresh Studio Scalloped Stitched Rectangles, and then there's also a bunch of other frames. I think I also end up using the Altenew Fancy frames. So when I do frame cutting, I end up with some extra frames, so I always keep those aside. And then in situations like this where I'm putting quick cards together, they really come in handy. So all I did was put together these frames with the backgrounds. Some of the backgrounds, I cut them down and I put them onto colored cardstock for the card base. These are all A2 size cards. And then I use different sentiments. Now this one I used the Lawn Fawn sentiment, the Happy Father's Day line border sentiment. And then the rest, I think I used the Pinkfresh sentiments that I already had cut out. And basically, I'm just putting them together. It doesn't really take any time at all. For all of the sentiments, I think I propped them up with some foam tape. And my foam tape, sometimes I use store-bought foam, and it can get expensive. So what I do is I actually take some craft foam, and then I add some wide double-sided adhesive to either side of the phone. And then I cut them into strips or squares, and then I can use them in instances like this. So as you can see, I've used the Altenew frame here for this green card with the gears, and it just basically highlights that center panel of your card and helps it stand out. And once that's put together, it finishes off the card nicely. So you can see I put together these 4 cards pretty easily. All 4 of them were done in such a short period of time, and they make such nice masculine cards because of the colors and the designs or shapes that I used on the card. Now, for that wintry scene, or in this case, just the forest or pine scene, I'm just going to attach it to, I think this is a little bit bigger than an A2 size card. And I'm just attaching it again with some foam so that it has a bit of dimension. And then I also went ahead and made a second one. So I couldn't resist. I had to try a sunset colored background with these trees. And so I used some squeezed lemonade, wild honey, spice marmalade, ripe persimmon, and then seedless preserves. Now, if I were to do this again, I think maybe the seedless preserves has a bit too much of a pinkish hue. And I might go with something a little darker like Villainous Potion, which would give this a bit more of a masculine look. But I mean, who am I to say that purple, orange, and yellow are not masculine colors? I mean, everybody's different. And not every guy likes blue and green, right? Everybody has their own favorite colors. So this card could work for a male as well. It just depends which male you're giving it to. Now, I finished off all of these cards with some Altenew. These are their enamel dots. They just worked very nicely with these cards, and I didn't really want to add any like shiny gems and stuff, just to kind of keep in tone with the masculine theme here. So these are all of the beautiful cards that I got. I guarantee you I put these together all in one afternoon, which is like a few hours, and they all work perfectly for masculine cards. It really is subjective. It's what you think works for your recipient, right? So I hope you've been inspired today. If you liked my video, don't forget to give me a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel if you'd like to see more. Everything that I've used in this video has been linked within my blog, which is linked in the description below. Don't forget to check that out because there actually is a giveaway going on right now for the Scrap and Stamp Inspiration Hop. So go ahead and leave a comment on my blog and you'll be entered to win whatever it is the prize that I've listed on my blog is. So go ahead and check that out. I hope you all have a great day and that you've been inspired to make some masculine cards. Bye.